You're listening to The Legal Hour with Keith Spencer on News Talk 820 WBAP.
We've got folks standing by to take your calls and set up a free personal consultation with a Bailey & Gallion attorney at an office near you. Call 800-LAW-8008. Andy Dietrich and his staff will be there till 5:30 tonight for your assistance. That's 800-LAW-8008. Scott, folks call me all the time, and they've had a car wreck, and the insurance adjuster is giving them fits. And it seems like now that police officers don't respond to most traffic accidents anymore and don't write up reports. It's harder than ever to deal with insurance companies yourself. Why is that?
Well, let's start with the police officer issue. There are so many people driving on the roads and so many wrecks per day that they just don't have the manpower to work every wreck. So unless somebody is complaining of a serious injury at a wreck, they're not going to come out and investigate it. And they recommend that you move the cars off the road and exchange information. And that's the critical first part of the whole process, is the two drivers, regardless of who's at fault, the two drivers need to have proper identification for one another. The insurance companies, of course, will conduct their investigation starting immediately. And if you think you've been involved in a wreck with a careless driver, you need to contact a lawyer immediately. Don't wait. The insurance company's not going to wait to do their investigation.
Well, the people call in and they say, well, the insurance adjuster called me, and he said he's talked to his client, and they've determined it was my fault. And he broadsided me, Mr. Spencer. But they've conducted their investigation, and they've determined that their insured was not at fault in this case.
I am shocked.
And I've seen that happen, believe it or not, in cases where it's been a rear-end collision on a highway with no obstructions, weather's fine, the guy just not paying attention. They say, sorry, we've determined that the accident was your fault, and Mr. Guy that's been hit from behind.
And how can they say that? Well, there's no rule that says they can't say that.
Yeah.
They don't have any obligation to you.
They're not under oath.
They don't have to be fair to you.
It's not their job.
Absolutely. In fact, it's really their job to go out of their way to not be fair to you. That's how they save their company money.
That's like a lot of contracts you and I have seen, Jay, over the years. If you rent space in a shopping center, no matter what happens, no matter whose fault it is, you pay for it. And if the parking lot needs repaving, you get to pay for it.
Oh, and I see contracts all the time that have a what is called a hell or high water clause in them. And basically they say, I know you bought office electronics, let's say, or let's say to a doctor. We know we sold you an X-ray machine, but it in fact could be a dirty bomb, or it could be a box that's empty that has X-ray machine written on the outside. That's your problem with the company that sold it to you.
We just bought the note.
We financed it. We bought the note, and you owe us this money. And so now you start to check into it, and you say, the lady that came by and sold me the equipment, we can't locate her. And by the way, that company was a P.O. box somewhere, and I looked them up online, and they've got a name that's very similar to a company that's in business, but it's no longer in business. And so what you've got is literally, look, I could not care less whether these people sold you an empty box. You owe me $186,000, and you're going to pay it. And if you don't pay it, I'm going to sue you, and I'm going to take this down in front of a judge, and the judge is going to say, that's what it says. Mm-hmm. You have got to get counsel before you make these big purchases, and you can't go with, and I hear it at least several times a day, but she said, but he told me. I say, I'm sorry, but this contract that I know you would have to have a magnifying glass to read, a magnifying glass and a law degree, by the way, but you signed it, and it says we can sell you an empty box or a dirty bomb or an old banana peel, and you owe us $186,000. Now, it's not that that's an impossible situation, but it happens on a daily basis. They'll sell you technology. I can assure you they've sold technology in the last quarter of 2007 that you will be asked to pay for several years after it is no longer functional.
With convenient monthly payments.
Absolutely.
At only 96% interest.
Well, it's a tremendous, I love it's a tremendous write-off. Well, a lot of us don't need a tremendous write-off. A lot of us need to, if we buy something, We need to buy it. It needs to work, and it needs to be at a reasonable price.
Jay, in the business world, do you think that somebody who would come to see you at the outset of that transaction, rather than when the transaction goes south, would save themselves a lot of money and a lot of heartache, a lot of headache down the road?
Tremendous heartache. And let me tell you what happens. I'm not afraid to disappoint the person that's selling it to you. I tell clients all the time, blame it on me. Tell them I'm a bad guy. Tell them I don't like commerce, that I think Adam Smith was a liar, okay? I don't care. Tell them that I'm so mean and awful that you're scared to enter into this horrible business transaction.
Well, and as I recall, you're an elitist.
Well, I'm absolutely an elitist. Now, I had people come to visit me the other day, and he looked at me with eyes wide and said, well, I think this is a great deal. Should I give this guy $500,000? And I said, I wouldn't give him $500,000 if it was mine. They were absolutely shocked. And we're going to blame you for messing up the deal. I said, blame me for messing up the deal? I've told you before, I've had teenage daughters, a wife. I've had lots of people that thought my opinion wasn't worth anything.
You're used to disappointing people.
I wake up in the morning.
Job.
One of my goals is to disappoint you as early in our relationship as I can. And part of that is by telling you don't do that.
We'll be right back to take some more calls and questions in just a few moments. Right now, John Scott's in the 24/7 820 newsroom with an update on today's news. You're listening to WBAP.